Greetings, love and blessings to you all. This is Street Oracle coming to you. I was going to do a live last night, but I had so much going on mentally and spiritually in regard to messages, in regard to things to discuss. It was a lot going on, so I was not in the right frame of mind to really talk about one specific topic because I had so many things just coming through all at the same time. But one thing did continue to come to the forefront, and that's what I'm going to be talking about right now. A lot of what has been going on in the spiritual community in regard to faith. There's a lot of question as to who is right, who is wrong, how can something work if you're not doing this system or that system and everything else. And rightfully so, rightfully understood that there are questions that everybody will have. But the thing that stands out the most is that if you don't have faith in anything, then to expect something to happen, whether it's by divine intervention, whether it's by some miraculous deed, whether it's by some good fortune, is to operate close to the level of insanity. But what has been a major debate is about hoodoo. I've seen so much talk about hoodoo, root work, conjure work, all of these things, and I've seen so many talk about how they had ancestors who did the work and they feel like they're following in their ancestors' footsteps and they're looking to learn and they're looking to grow and be established in their work, but they're detaching themselves from some of the practices, some of the knowledge that their ancestors were privy to. Before I go any further, I will say that I grew up in church. I had a time away from church, but I did come back to church, and in coming back to church, I did learn how to apply biblical teachings and text more so to a spiritual lifestyle. So I will not say that I am necessarily Christian. I am a spiritualist. I do practice spiritism, espiritismo as it's called in Spanish. But I do understand that biblical texts and teachings do apply in hoodoo in a number of ways. Hello, Cosmic. Glad to see you. For me, last month I had an investigation, Misa, to get more of a background understanding on the spirits that walk with me. A lot of things that were spoken were things that had been revealed to me when I would sit at my Boveda, when I would sit at my spiritual table to consult with my spirit guides. Some things were a bit of a shock to me, but the intention of my investigation, Misa, was to not only find out what is going on as far as who my spirit guides are, but to also find out why some things were not working on my behalf. And in finding out, it did allow me to have a greater understanding as to how to get in touch with my ancestors, how to get in touch with my Egun. My ministry that I have started, the Black Diasporic Spiritual Cultural Center, is for the purpose of spiritualism and biblical text. Notice I said biblical text. I didn't say Christianity. I said biblical text. It's for spiritualism and biblical text to come together, to be blended together, to establish a greater sense of spirituality and biblical understanding, to help with hoodoo, root work, conjure work, things like that. What I am finding as I continue with building this ministry and also working on myself is I'm finding that people do not understand what faith is. They believe faith is just saying that I believe in something. You can believe in something and not necessarily have faith. Hey, Anastasia, glad to see you. You can have faith. Well, correction, you can believe in something and not have faith. Faith is going beyond what you visually see. Faith is going beyond what you typically know. Faith is going into the realm of I do not know the totality of something, but I do know that this is the expected outcome. One of my favorite biblical verses is Hebrew 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The problem that people are having today in the spiritual community is that they're doing a lot of the practical, but there is no faith applied. When I say that, I'm saying this from a sense of they're seeing things that are done online. They're seeing things that are done in movies. They're reading things that are done by others who have written books and so-called given tutorials, and they're wondering why it's not working. It's because they don't have faith. First, they don't have faith in a higher power. Let's start there. But not only do they not have faith in a divine power, they don't even have faith in why they're doing it. All they're doing is believing and calling it faith that whatever they do is going to work. And that's not how faith works. Faith is understanding that what is to come already is. There's a reason as to why our ancestors were able to so effectively practice root work. They were able to practice conjuring. They were able to do whatever, the myriad of people want to call hoodoo and whatever it is. Some don't even like using the term hoodoo. Hey, of hazement. I hope I said that properly. But greetings, glad that you're able to join. There are those who are looking to understand why what it is that they're doing is not working. And it's because the ancestors, especially in the Black community, a lot of our ancestors who grew up in church, who did do those spiritual practices, even though they were in church. The reason as to why it worked for them and it's not working so much or as well. Hey, Devon. I hope I said that right. Devon? I really hope I'm getting it right. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the reason as to why it worked for our ancestors more so than it worked for us is because there is something that was stated in the scriptures that is missed. And that is great. I got it. The scripture is faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. Now, a lot of people today, because they are so intelligent and intellectual and sophisticated and refined, and because they have so many degrees and they have all of these books and teachings and everything else, that they basically have educated themselves out of faith. And in educating themselves out of faith, they have now placed themselves in a position where they're doing the work, but the work is not being effective. And the reason why the work is not being effective is because even though they're doing the work, with no faith being behind it, you're basically just working. I'm trying to figure out how to say this in a way that's best to be understood, because I'm going to save this and then I'm going to allow for people to comment on it. But you can be so wise. There literally is, I'm quite sure you've heard it said by a lot of the older folk, you're so smart, you're stupid. You can be so wise that you literally will take yourself out of faith. You can be so intelligent. You can be so well versed in the literature that you can literally take yourself out of spiritual understanding. And so when you're looking at how there are so many out here who are calling themselves spiritualists, root workers, hoodoo practitioners, Ifa practitioners, Lakumi practitioners, churchgoers, Bible thumpers. There's so many, and I'm using those because in the Black community, that's mainly what it is. It's either church or ATR, African traditional religions. It's either or. Rarely are you going to come across somebody who's going to say that they don't believe in any spiritual system. So that's why I mainly speak on church or ATRs. And I'm not saying I'm well versed in doctrine and scope of ATR, because in ATR being literally what it states, African traditional religions, we are a spiritual people. We are inherently a spiritual people. So, in that being who we are, we can gravitate to a number of spiritual practices because that's just who we are and how we are in our makeup. But in speaking about Christianity and spiritualism, in speaking about what we know as church hoodoo or Christian hoodoo, the reason why I work for them is because not only did they apply whatever spiritual practice, whatever spiritual workings that they learned from their family, throughout the generations, they applied the faith that they heard from the word, in that instead of them being locked in on this is what was used by the slave masters to enslave my great grandparents or my grandparents, or depending on how old they were, their parents, they said that this word has a power that will enable me to free myself, that will enable me to heal myself, that will enable me to overcome whatever adversity I'm dealing with, to where even though what's being spoken and what's being given is being manipulated by a person or a group, it's not something that is going to hinder them from having faith in that divine power. That's the reason as to why it was so powerful for them. That's the reason as to why they were able to do things in a way that worked for them and brought solutions to their problems. Another thing is that it wasn't something that was commercialized. That's another issue that is a major part in the spiritual community and in the church community, It's the fact that things have become so marketable. Things have become so commercialized. Things have become so commodified to make a dollar in some way, shape, or form, that instead of faith being instilled and taught and shown and applied to where the material, the monetary aspect of the energy transfers and transactions are handled in a more equitable and honorable fashion, it's been made to be that have faith that if you spend this money with me, that this is going to work for you. And that raises a question of, are you looking for something by faith, or are you just believing in the power of your dollar? Because that's what it boils down to. There is not a lot of faith that is being applied in the spiritual community, whether it's church or whether it's another spiritual system, because a lot of the focus is on how smart I am and how much money can I spend. That's not faith. You can't buy faith. You can't purchase or negotiate faith. Faith is something that is within you, that has been birthed, that has been cultivated, that has been matured. That's what faith is. Faith is not just merely saying that you believe in something. Faith is living as if that which you believe in is so. You can't say that you have faith if you're constantly walking in fear and doubt. And that's one of the beauties of the biblical text. In the instances of faith that are expressed throughout scriptures, when going by faith, you'll see that whether it was a factual event that happened or not, the reality of it is, I knew that whatever I was dealing with was going to be solved by whatever it is that I was supposed to do, and so therefore I'm just going to do it. They talk about Abraham and Isaac being laid on the altar to be sacrificed, and Abraham, he tied his son. His son was laying down there on the altar. He was getting ready to go ahead and slay his son, because that's what he heard. He heard that I was supposed to sacrifice my son and God was going to provide. And as he was getting ready to do it, he heard a voice that said, "Hey, stop. Look over there. There's a ram in the bush." A lot of people will argue, "Oh, well, I'm not going to sacrifice my son. Why would I give my son up?" Well, first off, faith was enacted in that moment in a number of ways. First off, Isaac was Abraham's son, and Abraham was already told that salvation for his people was going to come through his lineage. So by faith, he knew it's either I sacrifice this son and God gives me another son, or God is going to make something happen where I will not lose this son. That's a very good question, Psalms and Conjure. There is a difference between faith and spiritual psychosis. Spiritual psychosis is what would be considered lunacy. Faith is not going to have you do something that is going to go contrary to the very spiritual system that has been set up. So, case in point, again, with Abraham and Isaac. Abraham knew that the promise was that the seed of promise was going to come through his lineage. At that point, he had a decision to make: either not trust that what was told to him was true, or trust that what was told to him is true, and in that process, one way or the other, God was going to make that promise that he made to him come true. A lot of what is spiritual psychosis, and this is going to sound controversial, but it's the truth, and I've watched it happen throughout social media, hence the reason as to why I don't like going live too much. Spiritual psychosis, especially in this day and age, a lot of times are mental instabilities that are being charaded as spiritual enlightenment. And that's because of what power and what energy is behind it. So, case in point, Jim Jones, spiritual psychosis. Spiritual psychosis because in his fervor to say that he was a leader, that he was a spiritual leader, that he was called to do this, his actions along the way became more and more drastic. They became more and more radical. And not radical in a sense of reform, but radical in a sense of isolation, desolation, confusion, and tyrannical power. A lot of spiritual psychosis is happening in the spiritual community. I'm going to call it for what it is. Yes, the guy with the cult, the one that started off, I believe, in San Francisco, and then he ended up moving the people to, I want to say, South America or one of the islands in the Caribbean, and created a town. And one of the last things that happened with that town was a U.S. senator or a California senator had traveled down to try and talk to Jim Jones and the people, and there's actual video footage of it. I do not recommend anybody going to look for it. I know that I did say there's video footage, but I do not recommend anybody going to look for it, especially if you do not have the spiritual wherewithal to handle watching that event. He negotiated for an opportunity to go down there to speak to the people, and he was there, I believe, for a couple of days. And in the discussion with Jim Jones and the people, he somehow, in his belief, had negotiated an opportunity for anybody that wanted to leave peacefully to come back with him. There was a plane that was there large enough that if there were some people who wanted to come back immediately, they could. And if there were more people who wanted to come back, then they would go ahead and send for another plane to go back. Well, when it came time to leave, he headed back to the plane. There were some people who left with him. They were ambushed at the plane. They were all killed. And then there was the drinking the Kool-Aid moment. That's where the term drinking the Kool-Aid came from. It came from the Jamestown cult massacre. Those who did not drink the Kool-Aid, they were then killed. That's spiritual psychosis. But I said that there is spiritual psychosis that is running rampant throughout social media. It is not to that extent. The spiritual psychosis is that everybody that is following after this leader, this person, this spiritualist, has to dress a certain way. They have to have certain charms, medallions, emblems. They have to wear certain colors. They have to have certain crystals. They have to draw certain symbols. They have to. That's spiritual psychosis. I don't know why people believe it to be otherwise, but no, there's a difference between following by faith someone who has shown themselves to be spiritually aware, spiritually cognitive, spiritually in tune, spiritually evolved, spiritually mature. These are all things that are for some reason overlooked, all because of the simple fact that people just want to run away from church, quote unquote, and people don't want to be held down by too many rules or regulations or commandments or whatever man tries to dictate over others. There's a lot of spiritual growth that needs to be in place to be able to lead someone and also be led. Right. People like the aesthetics of spirituality. This is the reason as to why there are people who, even though they may have spiritual workings, they're problematic because they put on the attire, they put on the language, they put on the look, they put on the ambiance that draws people in and causes people to feel like, oh, they look like this, so let me believe in them. They say that they do this, so I can trust them. So now you're putting your faith in someone who either doesn't even have faith themselves in what it is that they're claiming to be leaders and practitioners of, or they do believe, but they're not responsible in their actions themselves. I know this is supposed to be strictly, I know I said I started this on faith, but trust me, everything is going to tie together as I continue, and you'll be able to understand. And if you have any questions, go ahead and ask. I don't have a problem with answering a question. Just don't ask me anything crazy. Don't. No, you came in at the time it was meant for you to come in on. But when there are people who are leading by look, leading by imagery, leading by marketing, because that's basically all it is, marketing. I can get you to believe anything I want you to believe in, and I can get you to believe in me if I know what can easily trigger you, if I know what can easily capture your attention. This is why I ask, why is it that so much of what's going on in the spiritual community is more so about marketing than it is about solutions? Everybody's looking for love. Everybody's looking for money. So, I mean, if I get on here dressed in all white and I had a white scarf tied 2 feet tall and had copper wired crystals all over my body, and I said, in this day and age, with so much evil and hatred going on in the world, you need to be able to have love. You need to know that you can come home to someone who loves you the way that you need to be loved. And if you will just buy my candle, and people will buy it believing that by faith that's going to work. It's not going to work. The reason why it's not going to work is because the way you need to be loved is not the way you need to be loved, which is not the way you need to be loved, which is not the way I need to be loved. So why are we all buying the same candle, looking for different results, when what's being pitched to us is by one person with one modality and one thought process? And that thought process is not to help you find love. That thought process is to make money. To make money. Like, we're just going to keep it a bean. As much as the church is called out for always looking for money and always trying to get money and take money, the fact of the matter is the spiritualist community is doing the same exact thing. It is. It is. I have literally one product that I'm trying to sell. Literally one. And that's my book. Here's why my book is different from you buying a candle. The candle has been enchanted to work on delivering to you whatever energy was put on that candle. And most times it's merely for you to attract love or be attractive to the person that you want to love you. My book was written as a personal experience for each reader to have in finding out who they are. Literally, the first chapter in my book asks, who are you? I'm not trying to push a universal product and expect you to find an individual result. I'm looking for you to take an individual approach in your healing and wellness. It's literally starting with you focusing on you. And then from there, as you move forward, however the book works out for you is going to work out for you. Why did I say all of that? I said all of that because when people start their spiritual journey, they start their spiritual journey comparing themselves to those who have been before them, those who have been in the practice longer than them, and they find somebody to try and equate themselves to. And that is the most dangerous thing that you can do. The reason why it is so dangerous is because, one, in you trying to equate your journey to that person, you're taking away from your experience and trying to equate your level of growth and maturity to their experience, to their life. So now, and this is going to sound harsh, but it's the truth, you have taken faith out of the equation, and now you have put comparison and relevance into the equation. Because as much as you're saying that you believe that you are going to grow to become who it is that you're meant to be, your focus is on trying to see if you can measure up to who this other person is. That's why it's difficult for people to grow in their spiritual journey, because a lot of spiritual leaders position themselves in a place where if your life is not looking like mine, then you're not doing something right, and that's not what a spiritual leader is supposed to be. A spiritual leader is supposed to be able to know how to reach those that they call themselves leaders of. And the only way they can do that is by operating in faith that whatever spiritual practice that they are in, whoever is the divine consciousness of that spiritual practice that they are in, that divine consciousness will align them to the divine consciousness, will align the leader to the divine consciousness to know how to effectively reach the people that they call themselves leaders of. So how can I lead you when I don't even believe, I don't even have faith in what it is that I'm practicing? A lot of people do not truly have faith in what they're practicing. They're just repeating what they were taught to do, what they watched other people do. They don't truly have faith in the workings that they do. They just believe that they're supposed to do this. So if you tell me that if I draw this circle and I put an X through it and then I put these symbols on the inside of it, then this is going to happen. If I don't have faith in knowing why it is that way, if I'm not taught why it is that way, then my mind is just going to be, oh, just draw the circle and put an X in it and then put symbols in it and then I'm good to go. Okay. This is how a lot of people live. This is how a lot of people practice spirituality. This is how a lot of people say they live in their spiritual journey, and they don't understand why things are not working. It's not working because there is no faith applied. You're just following instructions. That's what spiritualism has become to people. It's just become following instructions. So how can you look for anything to happen? How can you look for something miraculous and spectacular and divine to happen for you when you have no faith in what it is that you're doing? You have no faith in what it is you believe that you practice. All you're doing is just following instructions, copying what you've seen others do, and expecting things to work. That's why our ancestors were able to get things done. Secondly, they were able to get things done. It was because by faith, they were told how to do things for themselves. There's a difference between you praying and having what's called corporate prayer. What you're praying for might not be what I need. What I'm praying for might not be what you need. So we need to have an individual prayer life so that way we can be able to connect to that divine consciousness to help us to know what it is that we need, to have our angels and spirit guides and ancestors and whoever else from the spirit realm speak to us and communicate with us to show us what it is we need to do. If the only time you have prayer is when you're in a gathering and everybody is saying grace before they eat, how do you expect to have some type of spiritual life, spiritual growth? How can you expect something to happen for you when you have more faith in your car turning on when you put the key in it than you do in your ancestors trying to communicate with you and tell you that you need to leave that person alone? Again, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. If you have to see it before you have faith in it, you're not going to have faith in it. Yeah, that's very true. Very true. Very true. there are people who do want their hands held throughout the process. Psalms and Conjure Shop, she's making a very valid point. And she is one, if you need an ancestral reading, if you want to get a reading with your ancestors, if you um, need some work done, definitely contact her. Very, very good. But yeah, there are a lot of people who say they have faith, and yet, how do you have faith when you're going to that preacher, that pastor, you're going to that spiritual worker, that practitioner, and you're saying, I have this issue, I have this problem, I need help. And they say, okay, well, do this. Do I have to do that? Can you do it with me? I could, but this is your problem. I can advocate for you, but you still have to do work yourself. Faith is more so than acknowledging the problem and looking for the solution. Faith is you actually having to do something on your behalf. There's a passage where it speaks of a woman who had an issue of blood. She had an issue of blood for years. And the scripture says that Jesus was passing through the town, and she heard that Jesus was passing through the town. And she knew that she was not supposed to be there. She was bleeding. She was having a menstrual cycle. And according to the culture and according to tradition, a woman that's having a menstrual cycle is not supposed to be amongst the crowd. She's supposed to be away to herself. But she has dealt with this issue for so long that when she heard Jesus was coming through the crowd, she said, I know I'm not supposed to be here, but if I could just get to him and touch the hem of his garment, I know I'll be made whole. She said, if I can just get to him and touch the hem of his garment. It wasn't, if I could just get to him and tell him that I'm bleeding and for him to just take the blood away. No, she said, if I could get to him and I can touch him, I know that I'll be made whole. Her faith was, if I go outside of the norm and go to where I believe I can get my deliverance, one way or the other, I'm going to get my deliverance. That's not spiritual psychosis. That's faith. Oh, I can't talk about the mustard seed of faith. I can't do that. Because then a lot of people are going to be upset. A lot of people are going to be upset that they're so busy focused on the mustard seed that they don't understand that it's a seed. It's supposed to grow. You're supposed to do something to make that seed grow. It's not supposed to stay a seed. It's not supposed to stay a seed. The scripture says, if I have a mustard seed of faith, that's great. That means that you're starting somewhere. It doesn't mean stay there. Oh, yeah. Yeah, she did have it. Actually, I believe she had more than a mustard seed of faith, because the simple fact that she knew that she had to go past the culture, she had to go past the norms, she had to go past the rules, the ordinances of how women that are menstruating are supposed to be and conduct themselves, that she was going against everything to take that step, because she had faith that if she could get to this person that's healed others, I know that he can heal me too. That's how faith works. Can you be nervous? Yes, you can be nervous. You can be nervous and still have faith. That's why I was talking about with Abraham and Isaac. He was nervous because he was like, yo, God, you said that the promise was coming through my seed, and you telling me the one seed I have that I gotta lay this boy on the altar. Like, but if you said that my seed is gonna bring forth the promise, then I gotta go through with it. You'll make up for it somehow. Faith is understanding that you have to stop trying to intellectualize, and whether that's a word or not, that's a lot of people right now. Faith is about stop trying to intellectualize how spirituality is supposed to work for you. You don't control spirit. I think that's another reason as to why faith is lacking so much in today's time. People are trying to control spirituality. They're trying to control their ancestors. They're trying to control their spirit guides. They're trying to control angels. And sidebar, you cannot control angels. I don't care what spiritual practice you are in. I don't care what spiritual practice you are of. I don't care what anybody has told you that is supposed to be above you, beside you, under you, outside of you. You cannot control angels. You can't call down angels. You can't call down the Saint Michael the Archangel. You can't call him down. You didn't make him. You can't call down angels because angels operate outside of humanity. Again, faith. If you want an angel to come down on your behalf, you need to talk to the one who made the angel. That's how that works. That's how that works. And if you need proof, in the book of Daniel, Daniel was praying for over 21 days. He was praying for deliverance from the king who was persecuting the people. And the angel Michael, it called him the prince, but there's a reason as to why he was called the prince. The angel Michael came to Daniel and told him, I would have been here, but I was held up. I was held up. The next time you see Michael mentioned in the Bible is in Revelation. No, I'm sorry. The next time you see Michael in the Bible is in Jude, when he was contending with the devil for the body of Moses. After that, the next time you see him, which is the last time you see him, is in the book of Revelation. You can't call down angels. As they say in the corporate world, angels are above your pay grade. No matter how much faith you have, you can't call down an angel. So when people say, oh, I call down Archangel Michael to come down because he's the angel of warfare and protection, and he's going to protect me. You might have called down a spirit that operates like Michael, but you ain't called down Michael. And the reason why I say you didn't call down Michael is because being that angels are created by God, when angels come down, they don't come down operating off of feeling. They don't come down operating off of emotion. They don't come down operating off of perspective. Angels come down with one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to follow the commandment of God. Not you, God. It don't matter how much faith you say you have. You could have faith so much that you literally can look at the Rocky Mountains and say, Rocky Mountains, get up and go in the Pacific Ocean. And the whole world can watch the Rocky Mountains get ripped out of the ground, float over to the Pacific Ocean, fall into the ground. You cannot call down angels. You did not create angels. Angels are only dispatched by God. Being that is the case, you better be right if you call for an angel to be sent down. Because when they come down, they're coming down on a level of righteousness that goes far beyond what you think you are. Like, people really need to understand that. Now, I don't know why I'm feeling like a little more animated now. But yes, Really understand this. You cannot call down somebody that was made before you outside of your realm to operate for you. It's not how that works. So, with that being the case, can you call a demon to work on your behalf? No, because the demon is only showing up because of the energy that's in you. That's it. Sweet water doesn't attract better water. It doesn't. It's not going to happen. Oh, I was so peaceful and so calm, and they were attacking me, so I reached into the darkness and I called for this spirit of warfare and destruction to come forward and move on my behalf. Nope, don't work like that either. Nothing comes out of you unless it was first in you. So if you are able to call forward an evil, destructive spirit, that means there is evil and destruction in you. That's how faith works. See how powerful faith can be when you know how to rightfully apply it, and how destructive it can be when it's wrongfully applied? So now getting back to faith and how the spiritual community, and I am speaking both church and other spiritual practices that Black people participate in, how faith is not applied in the daily living and yet is believed to be. Faith is not being shown. Faith is not being exercised. Faith is not being practiced. Faith is not being cultivated. Faith is basically being marketed as, if you have the ability to do something, then that's what it is. And it's not. Faith is not, I got paid Friday, so I was able to go grocery shopping and I just so happened to be able to get a steak. No. Faith is, I don't know what's going to happen Friday, but I do know I'm going to be able to eat. And instead of me walking around disheveled and poor mouthed and grumbling and complaining, I continue to move forward as if that has already taken place, that it is going to happen. And by that faith, things will come together on your behalf to make it so. That's how that works. That's what faith is. Faith is something that is not exercised properly, and it is grossly misunderstood and misrepresented. Here's how simple faith can be. I know when I go out to the car and put the key in the car and turn the car on, that the car is going to come on. Faith is believing something so sure that you operate as if there is nothing else that can stand in the way. Faith is knowing that on Friday, I'm going to get paid. Now, they could have had a switch up at payroll to where you ain't going to get paid on Friday anymore. Now you're going to get paid on Tuesday. And they didn't tell you. But you just know. And because you know, you're going to go to work. You're going to go to work. You're going to do your job. You're going to do what you're supposed to do. Because you know that when that Friday, when that payday comes, you're going to get paid. That's how we should move in our spiritual journey. I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know what. I just know that it is. Because it is to be so. And I'm just going to live as if it is to be so. With that being the case, you'll find that some of you really don't need to be out here trying to buy your way into your deliverance. You don't have to try and purchase all types of things and try and do all types of tricks and spells and workings to try and make things work on your behalf. Because if you knew how powerful faith is, and if you knew how to exercise faith in your life, and if you truly had faith, I can guarantee that most of your situations could be solved by simply praying. That's it. Praying. How can I say this? I can say this because you're spending so much time looking externally for a solution that you're not tapped in internally. And there is a scripture that says, let this mind be in you that was also in Christ Jesus. And guess what Jesus believed? Jesus believed I could do all things because of my Father who sent me. Literally, that's literally what he said. I can do all things by my Father who sent me. So he was tapped in. Again, whether you want to argue if Jesus was real or not, we're looking at the Bible merely as a collection of text to help understand faith. So much time is being spent looking outwardly for a solution that because there is no time spent internally learning how to tap in, learning how to connect with divine consciousness, knowing how to build up faith, everything done is either going to have little result or no result. And the reason why is because the ancestors and those of old had faith not from a mind of, I'm going to figure this out myself. They had faith from a sense of, I was taught how tapping in and connecting with divine consciousness, and yes, they called him God. By tapping in with God, I know that he's going to deliver me. He's going to heal me. He's going to provide for me. He's going to make a way. And whatever I am led to do, if I do it, I know I was led to do it because he's working it out for me. That's why it worked for them. That's why faith was so important to them. That's why they would tell you, you got to believe. It doesn't matter what's going on. You got to believe. You got to pray. Like they were so heavy on prayer back then. It is amazing. And now when you ask somebody if they pray, they will look at you as if you have 3 heads on 4 shoulders. Prayer is so powerful that when it says that prayer changes things, It's not saying prayer changes people. It's that prayer can change the circumstance to where instead of it being against you, it can be for you. Prayer can change your mindset, which is the very first thing that should be considered when it says that prayer changes things. Prayer can change your mindset to where instead of you seeing despair, you see hope. It changes your mind from instead of you feeling like you can't make it, you have now opened up a line of communication to where your divine consciousness can now connect with your consciousness and can let you know how to move forward. Without faith, no matter what you do, it's not going to work out if you call yourself a spiritualist. Because the main tool, one of the two main tools in being a spiritualist, is you have to have faith. Not follow instructions that are handed to you like the instruction manual on how to put together a filing cabinet. No, it's faith in knowing that your guidance is coming from the Supreme Being. And if the Supreme Being happens to communicate to you through someone else, then knowing that the person that's communicating to you is communicating to you from a divine place. That's how faith operates. And a lot of people don't have that. So a lot of people are complaining about church, or they're complaining about ATR, and they're bouncing from one thing to another, hopping back and forth, don't know what it is to do, don't know why things don't seem to be working out. That's the reason why. It's you can try and blame anybody else. You could try and blame everybody else. You can try and say that's because you were given a bad product, and oh, this person seems like their product works better than the other one. You don't have faith. You don't. You're looking for someone else to do the work for you that you need to do for yourself. And you don't believe in anything to a point where your mental is being controlled. Your mind is not being controlled because you're so desperate to try and do anything that instead of tapping in, you're looking without. Yeah, people will always search for enlightenment until it's time to look within. And some of them don't want to look within because they know what is within. They know that what's within them is not good. They know it's not good. There's a reason as to why I don't look too much to those outside in the spiritual community. And it's because there's a difference between righteousness and self-righteousness. Nature operates according to righteousness. Nature operates according to law. Nature operates according to order. Self-righteousness is, in spite of everything else going on, I'm right. Self-righteousness is, in spite of whatever is happening any and everywhere else, my law, my rule, my order is right. And when people operate out of self-righteousness, they don't understand how much chaos they create because all they're thinking about is they're right. And quite honestly, self-righteousness is also a lack of love. That's what self-righteousness is. Self-righteousness is a lack of love. Because when you're thinking you're the only person that's right, you're holding yourself as judge over who gets mercy and favor and who gets condemnation and judgment. And you're basing it off of your perspective instead of basing it off of love. So when you're constantly looking outward for enlightenment, you're constantly putting yourself in a position where you can dictate what enlightenment is. I know that sounds weird to say, but it's the truth. When you're constantly looking outside of yourself for enlightenment, you're putting yourself in a place to where you can dictate what enlightenment is. Because if you're looking outside of yourself for enlightenment, you're not looking for enlightenment. You're looking for a visual, you're looking for an illustration of what you expect enlightenment to be. And that's where the aesthetic comes in. Some people believe that if a person is looking a certain way, then they have to be spiritual. A lot of times that's marketing, nothing else. Those people are about as spiritual as a hole in the wall. But they attract you because of how they look. And now you bought into it. Hello, esoteric. Because of that imagery, now people have bought into it. And now in them buying into it, now they're holding you. And this is a dangerous place. Now they're holding you as the image of perfection, or the image of righteousness, or the image of divinity. So now their faith is in that person. And so now whatever that person says is truth and factual. Which is why a lot of people end up falling away when they find out that whoever their spiritual leader is, has done some type of indiscretion or has committed some type of immoral act. That's why they fall away, because they're putting faith in that person instead of establishing a spiritual connection with the supreme being of whatever practice they say that they're a part of. People apply faith wrong in so many ways that it makes it easy to catch people who are distraught by the wayside. And I could get into this more, but I feel like I've said a lot already, and it might seem like it's a bit all over the place, but if you have to listen to it more than once and take down, what it is that I'm saying, you'll be able to see how it actually does all kind of connect together. Because there's a lot of confusion in the spiritual community. There's a lot of confusion in the spiritual community. And again, when I say spiritual, I'm not just talking spiritualists like ATR. I'm even including the Christian church, because to me, there is a spiritual aspect to the Christian teaching that has been missed, because there's a lot of gimmicks. There's a lot of theatrics, I'll say, that come into it. And because those theatrics have taken place inside of the building, people think that that's what Christianity is, and they don't understand that there's actually a very powerful spiritual element to what is called Christianity that is missed, because people are just looking at the acts and the activities of things that are happening inside of church buildings. But there's a lot of confusion in the spiritual community. And that confusion is causing people to believe that they can do and partake in whatever practice and freestyle it to whatever they think it's supposed to be. And it's actually causing more harm. And it's going to be irreparable harm, because it's going to be no matter what is done. nothing is going to help them in whatever condition they find themselves in. There are people who say, oh, well, I know I can pray and this is going to change. And I know that if I go and ask for prayer for this, then I know that, okay, let's be clear. There is actually scripture that says that there are things that are done that cannot be undone. There are texts in different spiritual practices that state that there are some things that once they are done, they cannot be undone. So to try and freestyle all of these spiritual practices and think that you can just make it up as you go along and everything is going to be okay, that's not true. That's not true. And a lot of that is happening right now. A lot of that is happening on social media. A lot of that is happening in brick and mortar locations. A lot of that is happening in people's homes. A lot of that is happening on the street corners where people come together and want to discuss, argue, debate, overtalk, yell, proselytize, whatever their spiritual or moralistically guided practice is. There's a lot of that going on, and a lot of that is dangerous. Because instead of taking the time to, like it was stated earlier, instead of taking the time to look within and establish a connection with the divine consciousness, with the Supreme Being, they're looking outward and trying to find something that can appease them. Or they make it up as they go along. So I ask everyone to protect yourselves. Take time to go within. Take time to really sit with yourself. Sit with yourself. Don't look for the answers that you want. Look for the answers that you need. Don't ask for an answer and when something comes forward that you don't like, you want to say, no, that's not it. Really take time to see if that's what it is. Hey, Gem Designs, I love your work. That is a beautiful woman, beautiful energy. If you see her, Gem Designs Boutique Jewelry, definitely check her out. She makes her stuff by hand. Awesome woman. By the way, if y'all are watching this and you have a brand, if you have a business, feel free to comment when this video is posted so that way people can know as they watch that, oh, there's somebody that does something. There's somebody who creates. There's somebody who has a business that I might be able to support, that I might be able to, purchase from. Because that's what it's about. That's another thing about faith. Faith is about community. Faith is about self, but faith is also about community. If someone says that they have faith and they're constantly operating on the fringe, they're constantly operating on the outskirts, they're constantly by themselves, question what type of faith that they have. Not saying they don't have faith, but for you to say that you have faith and your faith is constantly telling you to stay away from everybody, like you can't interact with anybody, you can't support anybody, you can't be there for anybody, you can't have space or make space for anybody, what type of faith do you have? Because your faith should not have you in a constant state of isolation. Your faith should enable you to know who to be around and who to not be around, who to give to and who to not give to, who to love up close and who to love from a distance. That's how faith works. That's how faith works. I'm introverted. When I say I'm introverted, I am introverted. Like, yeah, I literally in my head have an internal clock that lets me know after a certain point, yeah, you gotta shut it down. You gotta shut it down. Too many people, too much energy, too much stuff. You gotta shut it down. You gotta recharge. So I recharge. But I'm not, oh, I can't be around people. How can I say I can't be around people when faith enables you to help others? Faith is about you being for others what others can be for you. That's faith. So, yeah, if you have a business, if you have a brand, and you're watching this live, you made it this far. If you made it this far, please put your brand. Because I'm quite sure you've been either listening or you just happen to come in at this time. Feel free to put your business in the comments. Feel free to put your business in the comments so that people can be able to look at you. But yeah, like I said, this is about faith and the reality of faith. What faith is. Faith is not something that you can market. Faith is not a marketing. It's not a marketing ad. It's not a campaign. Faith is a true divine spiritual lifestyle. That's what it is. Faith is a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. Faith isn't something that you can put on and take off like shoes. It's not something that you just change every day like your underwear. Faith is a lifestyle. Faith is what you live. And as you live faith, it goes from that mustard seed that is so small, and then it grows to be that mighty tree that can provide shade, and the birds can sit on there, and it is a beautiful tree. Faith is more than the mustard seed. You start at the seed, but it grows into a mighty plant. It grows into a tree. And the tree works not just for you, but for others. Your faith should be able to empower others. Your faith should be able to encourage others. Your faith should be able to light that light in someone else's mind to say, if they can make it, so can I. And then by faith, instead of you trying to tell people how your one love spell can work all of these different magical things, you take that time to work with that one person to find out what it is that they need to help them grow in their faith so that they can be established in their faith. Yeah, I know I'm going to have some people coming at me. But again, I grew up in church, and I grew up in church where I actually had good teaching. So I know if you have a lot of people coming at you, it either means that you are constantly the aggressor, or you stepping on some toes that don't want to be stepped on. I operate in faith and love. That's literally the motto for my ministry. My ministry is where faith and love are our greatest tools. Faith and love. I'm not pushing anything else. Am I using biblical texts and teachings? Absolutely. Am I using root work and believe in conjurings? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it all comes down to faith and love. Because without those two, any and everything that you do that's void of those two things is going to come to naught, or it's going to be destructive. So, with that being said, love and blessings to you all. Hopefully you watched this and stuck with me throughout this time. Pray that there was a message for you to receive. And again, understand what faith is and how to exercise it in your life so that you can have a greater connection in your spiritual journey. Doesn't matter who you believe in. I'm not here to try and convert anybody. I'm not here to try and push any one religion on anybody. What I am here for is to help you to establish a divine connection with whoever it is you say that you believe in. And understand that in you having a spiritual life and in you having your own individual spiritual journey, the purpose of our spiritual journey is to become divinely connected to our supreme being. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter what you call them. It doesn't matter what their names are. Your spiritual journey is supposed to bring you closer to them. So if whatever you say that you believe in and how your life is going don't line up, my focus is to help you to find where it is that you're falling short, to help you to connect so that way you can be able to have that relationship with your supreme being. That's what I push. Because the closer you get to divine consciousness, the more balanced and harmonious your life is supposed to be. Not just in yourself, but with nature, with all that's around you. Because my belief is we are all individual perspectives of the one divine consciousness. We are all individual perspectives of the one divine consciousness. So along this journey, we should be getting closer and establishing a better understanding and relationship with that divine consciousness that we are all the perspective of. Love and blessings to you all. I pray that this resonates with you. And if you want to talk, if you need a consultation, whatever, you can hit me up. Hit me up. We can schedule something. We can figure out what's going on. We can go from there. I do have a ministry that is in the works, Black Diasporic Spiritual Cultural Center. I'm continuing to work on that. It is coming together. And like I said, the only product I have is my book. I'm not selling candles. I'm not selling powders. I'm not selling any of that. Why? I'm not called to do that yet. I was also told there's a reason as to why I don't need to be doing that. The only thing I'm selling is my book, which is titled From Trauma to Triumph, Healing Him in This Present World. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it in the link in my bio. It is titled Healing Him in This Present World, but there are women who have read the book and said that the book is inspiring and motivational to them as well. So if you know anybody that could use a copy, or if you want to read it yourself, definitely go ahead and purchase a copy. Other than that, if I do anything with you, for you, it's definitely going to be for you. And so if there is to be an energy exchange in the form of money, that will be something that's discussed with you, for you. Y'all have a blessed day.